Thank you.
Come on.
Oh, wait. Okay, go.
All my knees as well. Join the generation.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Excuse us, please. Hello, man. Hey, sorry, please. Wow. Like, seriously, that's so rude.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much for coming through. It becomes absolutely crucial to note the fact that as part of the South Africa that we live in, we've always said to ourselves that moving a motion of no confidence in a president is an act of accountability. We believe without doubt that it was right of us to have moved all those motions of no confidence in Jacob Zuma. And along with many South Africans, we welcome the fact that he has resigned and in fact has been removed from office. But we recognize equally so that moving a motion of no confidence is not the shortest way to power. It's not a way of saying if you remove one president, therefore it ought to be the opposition that replaces that president. We are of the complete view that regardless of how South Africans at this point in time, who feel quite correctly so, jubilant about the removal of Jacob Zuma, must also recognize that we don't only have a Jacob Zuma problem, we have an ANC problem. The ANC has been collective in defending Jacob Zuma. It's the same ANC that has captured the state. It's the same ANC that in fact started to replace boards of state-owned enterprises. It is the same ANC that naturally has concluded that when you come to places like Life Isidimeni, where patients were killed, it's the same ANC that murdered people in Marikana. It's the same ANC that ultimately, when we're seeing now in places like Johannesburg, Tshwane, Nelson Mandela Bay, where levels of corruption are high, this is the same ANC. So therefore today, it would be for us inappropriate to stand and say we support Mr. Ramaphosa. Because ultimately we are of the view that we have a better policy offer. We believe that South Africa needs a complete reset. It does not need a space where we can continue with ANC policies of expropriation without compensation. Policies where in fact we've seen the defense and support of corruption. So the natural landscape with which we look is that along with many of the opposition, many of you would know, I submitted a note to the Speaker of Parliament requesting that as an urgent matter, we debate Section 50 of our Constitution. That in fact Parliament must be dissolved. Mainly because in the Nkandla judgment, we recognize the fact that Parliament was found against. But we also recognize the fact that the problem isn't just Jacob Zuma. The problem is the ANC. The sooner South Africa can go to the polls, the better it would be to give a fresh mandate to the people of this country. It is how constitutional democracy works. It is how Parliament is set up to work. And therefore, in the light of that, we will in this afternoon, we believe that Parliament must function. And if the ANC wants to install Cyril Ramaphosa, they must go ahead and do that. But they must note the fact that with an immediate effect, we must proceed towards saying, how do we dissolve Parliament? And I would hope one of his first acts is to proceed in dissolving Parliament. South Africa needs that fresh start. How many South Africans who are here will ask the question about the result that has taken place in the city of Cape? I recognize what has taken place in the city of Cape. What is clear is that in fact, as in any democracy, we go and we take a vote. And in fact, that Patricia survives this particular motion of no confidence does not mean that ultimately she holds the confidence of her own caucus. This is but a step in a long journey. And what we've got to ensure we do is continue to effect accountability. The Federal Legal Commission charges against her still remain and will proceed on that basis. Because we believe ultimately that the case that is before her still has to continue and that we must ultimately get to the accountability of the matter without pronouncing death. So let us proceed. Let us ensure that as we get back into this chamber today, we in fact focus on the business of South Africa and say let's get back to the electorate and get a fresh mandate for any party that is to go forward and win elections. The matter doesn't go back to caucus, it remains with our Federal Legal Commission. I think without doubt we should settle this matter as quickly as we can, and I'll continue to work towards that. There's no doubt about the fact that I think now Patricia De Lille is governing with an ANC mandate. And so it is a genuine concern for us as a party, and it must be investigated and accountability must be effective.
But it doesn't sound like you accept the results of the caucus.
I accept them, but what I'm saying is 110 members of our own caucus voted her out. So we must recognize that in a caucus of 150 councillors, that mandate does not come from. So this matter must be investigated, but the FLC charges that were preferred against it must continue.
Do you think that it's going to disadvantage you, especially when you're calling for an early election and your own caucus at the city of Cape Town is voting against you? Don't you think that is going to be a blow?
I think when we say we stand for constitutional democracy, we must remind ourselves that constitutional democracy means that in fact it's the legislature that votes, and we must respect that outcome. But ultimately, just because one city happens to find itself in this space does not mean that we've got to go ahead in South Africa and campaign. The fundamental issue here in South Africa is that we need a fresh beginning. We are here to discuss the fact that there are 9 million South Africans who are unemployed. We're here to discuss the fact that over 30 million of our citizens are living in poverty. These are the issues that I'm looking forward to contest. And so if Mr. Ramaphosa is elected today, we must recognize the fact that we will hold him accountable and we will hold robust discussions against him, because South Africa needs a brand new start. And therefore, that doesn't change. We are of the view that ultimately it's not just going to be removing Zuma that will solve the problems. It's also about removing almost half of the cabinet that is in place. I'm not certain where there's enough other people to fill the other slots. The issue going forward is that we have to ensure that we hold a new stance, get a fresh mandate. In the meantime, we'll hold him accountable, and where there are policies that we agree with, I'll certainly work with Mr. Ramaphosa, if he's elected today, to advance the freedoms of the people of South Africa.
Will the DA vote for, against, or abstain?
Well, it depends if there's another candidate put forward. So it's not automatic. We won't be putting a candidate. No, I think the judgment, we've always maintained that it was consistent with the judgment at the Constitutional Court. The Constitutional Court made it very clear the fact that caucuses have a conscience in terms of what they vote. And in fact, the only debate that was on the table was whether by secret or open ballot. The fact of the matter is that even the court affirms the fact that it ought to be the discretion of the Speaker, to which that matter is entitled.
Will the DA fast-track the charges now against Patricia De Lille?
When we made the statement on the 10th of January, we made it very clear that it's a 60-day exercise, and in those 60 days, those have already begun. So we want this matter to be expedited as quickly as possible.
Will you act against the people who voted against?
What is the DA's target?
The ANC is split. It's split ideologically. The ANC can't explain to us whether it will be radical economic transformation or whether it will be a new deal. Nobody knows. So therefore, one where we say, let us build a South Africa for all. Let us ensure that we stimulate manufacturing, make sure that in fact around the economy we build an inclusive economy. Let us open internships for young people. Let's make sure that as of next week, when Malusi Gigaba tables a budget that includes a VAT hike, we must be aware that this will be a complete slap against the poor. Our sole core is that we must fight against South Africa. We must fight for South Africans who are left behind, who are still today. SATU have voted to sponsor Cyril Ramaphosa. Is the same SATU now going to ensure that teachers are given the freedom to be able to vote, to do their jobs in class without interference of unions? So I can't endorse an ANC program, I can't endorse an ANC budget, because it comes with consequences, and Cyril Ramaphosa has been a part of it, and we can't simply, right now, and I will position this on Monday when we come through to say, this is the South Africa we want to build and how we want to go about it. This is a new day in South Africa, and the sooner we get to the voters, the better it will be for all of us. Thank you so much.
Thanks, colleagues.
How are you?